I was listening to the latest numbers. They sounded, really like they're improving, which is nice.
Well, yeah, I mean, as Dr. Scott described, we're in a period of calm, but I think the public health types are concerned about the variants. And I thought her observations were interesting in terms of, just staying vigilant and just trying to push things out to the summer.
Yeah.
And how much ventilation is the key. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't have any problems getting to the summer.
Is everybody on?
This may be it. It's 4:30.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can get started. Kate said that she would be coming in late. She had an appointment.
Okay, well then I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know that the most important topic I think we could probably talk about, and I'll go over the numbers in a moment, what are the vaccines. We are ready on our part to do our part here in Newport and open up the CRI site on February 19th. We anticipate getting 170 doses next week and for the next 4 weeks for those that are 75 years and older. And we are in the process of booking those appointments. So that's it. We're one piece of the pie. We talked about last week pharmacies and how Walgreens and CVS have opened up their vaccine process. And the good news today is that at the 1 o'clock press conference today, Dr. Alexander Scott said the state would be opening 2 state vaccination locations next week. One at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence for a capacity of 500 shots per day. One at the Sockanosset Crossroads in Cranston with a capacity of 900 shots per day. The registration website and the phone number to start those processes will go live next Wednesday, which is February 17th, with vaccinations starting on February 18th. The registration process will expose windows of 2 weeks at a time, meaning one can look for availability in the next 14 days starting from next Wednesday. And the registration will initially be limited to the 75 plus population. So I think that's generally good news that all the state's processes are all going to be running on all fours come next week, and we're part of that. And as I said, we're opening up our local clinic on the 19th, and we have the go ahead. And that's the news I have on vaccines. I don't know anything about supplies. We don't control the supply chain. We're simply an administration site that the state has allowed to open. That may change in terms of ours operating a local site. That may change, and it probably will change. Again, we're operating it along with Middletown. That may change in the long term, but right now the state is simply looking at the short term, meaning the next 8 weeks, if you will. And then after that, there's already some very healthy discussions going on as to what the processes will look like going forward, particularly considering that the supply will definitely increase. And so the thought process right now is that they will have 3 mass vaccination centers, like the 2 that I described, as well as 5 regional pods for vaccinations. And of course, by that time, we will be through the 75 plus population and onto the 65 and lower populations. There is a little discussions that we'll be entering into in the next week or so about the future of a local pod here on Aquidneck Island, but that remains to be seen, and we will have those discussions, and I'll let you know sooner than later as to where we stand with it. But things seem to be moving on, and I know that the discussion today at the press conference was where Rhode Island was in its progress of vaccinating people, and the press was criticizing the state, but I think you can see some light at the end of the tunnel with the opening up these state vaccination sites and a slow incremental increase of supply, and those are all good things. So unless you have any other questions about vaccinations, I can move on to the numbers.
Joe.
Yes,
Where are you?
Jamie, oh, sorry, Lynn.
No, sorry, I'll raise my hand. I sorry. You want me to do it?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. I just had a quick question, Joe. I know that
Sure.
you've said in the past that the local vaccine site is operating as an extension of the health department, essentially. And I know this is probably a question that you don't have the answer to, but I just wanted to ask in case you did. Has there been indication that they would allow it to continue like that, or do you think that they would look at taking it over and operating it as a state site like the two new ones?
Well, I reflect on my description of it because that's how the law and our MedPod emergency manual describes us as, many departments of health, if you will, delegated and controlled by the Department of Health. I don't see them taking it over, if you will, and supplanting personnel that we would have to contribute. There may be elements of it that get taken over. I don't necessarily think for the long term that the way we have designed it and all the other municipalities have designed it, because the complaints and the concerns are common, and that is the sustainability of the systems that we have in place. We're relying upon volunteers, as many other municipalities are relying upon volunteers, plus our own personnel. So there is a burnout factor. There's a sustainability factor. But I think what they're going to look for in discussions that we're having is balance. I would say to them that I don't think we can sustain it with volunteers. The volunteers have done wonderful work, but this is a 6-month endeavor. So I have something. Brian Dugan has some thoughts as to how we could maybe supplant those volunteers. And then you get into also our own workforce. They have day jobs, and it's costing us money. And it has that reverberating effect throughout respective departments and personnel. On the other hand, there in the new stimulus package that is still being developed, at least in the House bill, as I understand it, there are funds. There is money going to be available to assist those that may be hosting a local or regional pod. Now, I should probably get away from the word local, because it would have to be something that's more regional in a sense, and that we share it not only with Middletown, but maybe a couple of other communities. And so our thoughts would be we would have to rotate personnel out there, that we wouldn't strictly be the host, just like, Middletown and Newport will be having personnel manning the vaccines when we're operational. So there's still, the interesting thing, Jamie, is there's still a lot of details discussed, and indeed, we expect in the next day or so, or maybe tomorrow, there's going to be a little survey the Department of Health sends out to us to kind of get our feelings about the long term. So now, and they have bifurcated it like that. Let's talk about the term, and then the long term. We still have a lot of discussion have to occur about how to operate.
Okay. Councilor.
Hi, yes. I was in a meeting for the age-friendly group, and Carmela Gear was on the meeting. And, now that there are various avenues for a vaccination, whether it's the February 19th or CVS or Walgreens, she said, don't hesitate to go to CVS or do whatever you can to get vaccinated as fast as you can. And, but to please just let her know that you've got the appointments. And the other thing I asked her was if one person, let's say a husband, gets called to be vaccinated in Newport and has a wife, of course, the same age, then the spouse would also be vaccinated at the same time. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Good points.
Joe, I just wanted to ask you about the discrepancy in the numbers of holding vaccine. Was that discussed at all?
No, I don't think there's any discrepancy in the numbers and holding back. Remember, they have to give second doses
I understand.
at some time. And there's also today at a briefing, I've had so many briefings today, I'm losing track of which ones were public and which ones were private. But at one of the briefings, you know, Dr. Scott, it might have been the one this morning, or maybe it was a press conference, or maybe it was one this afternoon. But you know, it seemed that they're representing, based upon some graphics, that their targeted approach is working and nothing is going to waste.
Okay.
So I think that answers your question. There isn't anything. I don't think anything is being held back.
Okay.
And I see this. You know, it's a good thing that these mass vaccination sites are opening up. And when I indicated that the Dunkin' Donuts Center is has the capacity of 500 shots a day, and the Sakanasa location 900 per day, that can only grow as the supply grows. So because those are, you know, and they'll be pumping those vaccinations out pretty aggressively. So that's good stuff. I think the triumvirate, which is the pharmacies, the regional pods, and the state centers it's a good approach. It's a great approach, and the whole idea is, and I think Lynn hit the nail on the head. Just if you can get an appointment, get your appointment and get them in your arm as soon as you can. So, you know, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you cancel an appointment because you got shot at CVS.
Okay. Councilor McCalla?
Okay, I just want to go back to something that Jamie had brought up in regards to the volunteers. And I think that my question is, do we know, I know that that's a concern for the city at this point, is how sustainable our volunteers are going to be in the future. And do we have a number of how short are we thinking? And what's going to be our communication strategy? Is there going to be a communication strategy to call upon more volunteers?
We have, my understanding is there is a robust bank of volunteers. And Carmela Gear has done a nice job in marshaling them all and giving them a preference, if you will. And there's some that are obviously specialized, and there are some that are kind of generalists. So it's not an issue of communication. It's an issue of how the state wishes to organize the availability of vaccines going forward, and what do they see the role of a local municipality being, either by itself or in tandem with other municipalities, and how do the groupings work? Those discussions are kind of starting, and that's why I say that the near term, I mean, we take all our marching orders on this from Rhode Island Department of Health. The near term is what we're concentrating. The long term are discussions that are going to happen tomorrow and next week. Ryan Dugan and I started discussing it just last evening, the long term, because I'm sure his REMA and FEMA counterparts have reached out to him and started the conversation, as has my counterparts, and with regard to the governor's office and the telephone conferences we have thus far with RIDO and the governor's office. So this is all a work in progress, but it's the near term, which is the thing we're trying to jumpstart on. It's what we have, you know, our vaccine clinic and the mass vaccination sites. So all that will be rolling out in the, I suspect pretty soon. But there's a lot of work to go into a lot of pieces of the pie here. There's a lot of people participating in. I could tell you that I'm aware of one or two municipalities that say, oh, we absolutely want to do our own vaccination clinic for our own citizens. And they don't talk about it being regional, but in a small city like Newport, you know, we're working in tandem now with Middletown, and we probably have to work with one or two other municipalities if we are going to be a host site. But all of that is going to be driven by the Department of Health, ultimately.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the manager? I'm just looking, okay. Joe, I think that suffices.
Well, I want to just go over the numbers real quick.
Sure.
Hospitalizations are down. I would say from, you know, a few weeks ago, dramatically, 238 hospitalizations. Our local numbers are down as well. RIDO reports 77 new cases. You know, you may say that compared to Middletown and Portsmouth, that had a lot fewer, but I suspect that I don't have this, I don't have concrete evidence, but I can surmise that where at least approximately 30 of those cases are coming from. I can pinpoint, I'm fairly certain I can pinpoint the location. So if I were to put those on the shelf, you know, I would say we have, you know, 50 new cases, 45 cases or whatever. And that's not bad compared to where we were, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Last week when we talked, I didn't get a chance to disclose the numbers, but it was 111 new cases. So 111 to 77 is a good decline, as it were. The biggest concern that Department of Health has are these lurking variants, the South African, the Brazilian, and the UK variant. They're generally concerned about them, and you know, vaccination is the key. Continuing to test is the key, and you know, taking advantage of your 65 or older the treatment, so you can stay out of the hospital is the key. So the idea is, if we remain vigilant and we're able to push things this summer, and this came out of from Dr. Scott, Alexander Scott, and so that, you know, we get outdoors and you know, ventilation, which is positive. If you recall last summer, despite all the people we had here, our numbers weren't bad. Our numbers were, you know, were dramatically much less than what they were now. So I think there's some evidence, certainly concrete evidence, that we can point to as to, you know, that push, if you will. So it's just all about vigilance right now, and just, and I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, as you're aware, some of the restrictions are being modified, not lifted, but modified as of tomorrow, which are good things for industry. And as Dr. Alexander Scott indicated, just going to keep an eye on things. So all in all, we're in a very calm period, as she indicated, and that's good.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the manager? Joe, if that's all you have to report to us today, if you can keep us kind of posted for any major changes on a daily basis, would be appreciated.
Yes.
I had a couple people call me today, and I just want to ask this. It doesn't have to do with the COVID. Did they indicate that the advisory on the water would be lifted at 5 p.m. today, last night?
Well, I just got we had to wait to 4:10, the 24 hours
Yeah.
had to pass at 4:10, and I actually just saw one of those alert. I don't know if it came in or not. Julie had indicated she thought we'd be sending something out at 4:30.
It came out while we were in. I got it while we were in.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
did I, yep. So good, all right.
Great.
So, and I assume it said the advisory is lifted, correct? But for the 3 streets, the 3
Yeah.
neighborhoods that are still
Thanks. So.
directly impacted. Great, super. Enjoy
Okay.
your water.
Thank you. And we will be back for our meeting at 5 o'clock. For
Oh,
plan-
that's right.
I'm gonna go brush my
Enjoy.
teeth now today.
What?
Okay, take care.
All right, thank you. Okay. Nope. Right. Okay, good. All righty. Let me talk to you later. All right, bye-bye. Okay. I gotta get this real quick.
Get on mute.
Maybe not until it starts up again.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to continue on.
All right.
Hopefully.
We should be starting momentarily. Chris, should we be taking a roll call vote for this meeting?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, it's the same meeting. The notice had both of these items in the same meeting. So there wasn't really a need to break. So, yes, you can take your roll call now. And I just want to make sure if maybe Carlos could confirm we have the same login ability that we had for the previous meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, so the login is the same. We were just notified, or at least I just saw through email, though, Granicus feed approximately stopped at 4:39. It was somehow interrupted. So I just reset the system, and so we are now streaming on Granicus, so as well.
Okay.
okay, yes, you can do the roll call at this time. The roll call can be done, really. Doesn't matter that it wasn't done at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. Carlos, if you'd like to do the roll call, please.
Jamie Bova,
Hi, or here.
Lynn Underwood Segley,
Here.
Elizabeth Fuerte,
Here.
Charlie Holder,
Here.
Catherine E. Leonard,
Here.
Angela McCalla.
Here.
Jean Marie Napolitano.
Here.
We have a quorum present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, the purposes of this meeting today, we're going to discuss those that we interviewed for the planning board, and I'll just provide a list of the names. Christopher Daly, Kett Murphy, Amanda Ward, Derek Grinkin, Tom Gibson, William Lloyd, Margaret Polski, Michael Ryan, and Anand Toprani. Would anybody like to start in terms of a candidate that they felt we should be considering? Among those candidates, is there anyone that? Yes. Counselor Leonard?
Yeah, I was very impressed, if we're going to choose one, with Anand Toprani. I took copious notes on everybody, and I found him to be not only smart with the subject matter, but also with his skills. He teaches strategy, teaches long-term planning, and the notes I took on him, let me find them because I had lots. When we asked why did he apply, he put that it's part of Newport's future. He talked about, Angela asked a question of how he analyzes a problem. And he said he did a lot of research and organized his thoughts and wrote things down. Then he talked about Newport's challenges, limited tax base, older population, shrinking population, limited tax base, maintaining aging infrastructure, climate change, and rising sea levels. When Elizabeth asked him about the role of the planning board, he said assists with the planning board and helps council by making sure of things as an advisory board. He talked about the North End urban plan when Charlie Holder asked him, and He talked about year-round economy and where the funding would come from. So all in all, he would be my first choice after going through all the notes of all the people, which I won't bore you all. But that's why I chose him for my personal first choice.
Okay. Are there any other counselors that would like to either speak in regard to Mr. Toprani or another candidate?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Counselor Bova?
Thank you. So I actually agree with Kate that Anand Toprani was a really great candidate. I also really liked a few others. I thought that Margaret Polski was really impressive with her background in policy and how she's worked in policy at different levels of government all over the world. And, you know, especially with the planning board, how that, you know, how a lot of the active work of that board is in helping develop ordinances and plans. I think that she could be really beneficial. I also really liked Lloyd with his background in housing. I think that having someone who has a strong housing background and has worked in community housing and really understands how that field operates would benefit the planning board as well. And then also I liked Kett Murphy. She is an architect, and we know that the planning board would benefit from having an architect on. And while we have one now, that is probably not, you know, I know that Kim is term limited, so we wouldn't be able to have her on the board forever. So I think that looking at having an architect would be really beneficial.
Okay. Are there any other counselors that would like to discuss any of the candidates?
Councilor McCalla has had her hand up.
Oh, I don't have the full screen. Okay, Counselor McCalla, please.
Sorry, I was like doing the Muppet dance for a second. Like, anyway, first of all, I just want to acknowledge, I think that the amount of applicants along with the talent that just applied, we are so fortunate that we had so many people that were interested and just really talented. And I feel like for me, and I'm sure for others, right? Like this was a really like hard decision. There were many, all I could see like totally, you know, doing a great job and in that sense. I am thinking about in terms of, you know, the planning board. I do agree with Jamie in terms of like, we have to be thinking about creating like the perfect, I don't know, like dream team in terms of the planning board. And I is not an architecture, like architect on the planning, because I mean, just doing so much work with them and understand form-based code and all of these dimensions and setbacks, like who's going to be the professional to be to interpret that? And I also see who's going to be our lawyer. To me, I feel like we need somebody to be able to interpret a lot of our zoning. I know throughout like Newport, some individual, you know, we've all received probably like talks about our zoning ordinances and interpretation that really needs to be discussed for future wise. And I also agree with Kate in terms of Anand. I think for me, Anand was a wild card, and I felt like he just had the pulse of what was going on. And for somebody to, you know, lots of times too, like we've often like asked that question of, have you read the comprehensive land use plan? And it was clear that Anand just, not only did he read it, he just could interpret, like, and it was really impressive, but I was also impressed by, like I said, I think any one of them, Chris Daly, Kett Murphy, probably, I believe with an architecture background, I was impressed by, so with a law degree, Bart was one that stuck out for me too.
Okay, thank you. I would say that planning and zoning do have the work of our solicitor, our assistant solicitor, sometimes at their meetings, and they are given instructions by them. So it's not a matter of necessarily having a lawyer on the planning board, which, I mean, could be helpful in any case, but they do receive information and regulations and everything else from our staff here at City Hall. And I do echo your comments. They're terrific applicants this time. I think everybody would agree to that. We have, let's see, Councilor Holder. Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So just to start off, I do want to thank all the applicants. To me, I know my time going through this, it was a very difficult decision to come down with what ended up being 3 positions. But in saying that, I think we kind of have done ourselves a little bit of a disservice in how the interview process has gone, and I think it's something we need to really look at and update. I don't think we gave these applicants enough time. There's a lot of questions I'm sure that we all have, and having 15, 20-minute intervals with the multiple interviewees at each session is really difficult to really get a feel for who a lot of these people are. Because you want somebody you basically want the best applicant, you want the best for the job, regardless of if they're an architect or if they're a lawyer or if they're have done planning before. You want somebody that has a kind of a full knowledge of what this city needs. Now to me, I think of this last position, I think Anand Toprani was by far the best candidate that we had interviewed to that point. So I am voting for him. I'm happy with the other 2 nominees that we had as well, Kevin Michaud and Teresa Stokes. I think they'll all do a great job. But I just think we need to really look at how we work with this process going forward.
Okay. Councilor Leonard, then Councilor.
I just wanted to reiterate what you said, Jean. We
Yeah.
do have Trish Reynolds on the planning staff. We do have our solicitors, and the planning board is basically advisory. They're not there to create certain aspects of what we do, but to give us their recommendations, which are really important. So I don't necessarily feel that we need an attorney and an architect, but I do feel that, like Charlie too, that we have really great candidates that applied, and we may have openings coming up soon, and we should, keep these names, because we hope that they would consider with other vacancies.
Correct. Councilor Bova, but Councilor Forte hasn't spoken yet. So can I go ahead and take Councilor Forte? What? Okay.
I'm saying yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I too echo thanking all of our applicants. Very good applicants. And I echo a lot of what my colleagues have said about each applicant. The 2 that stands out for me is definitely Mr. Toprani and also Bart Lloyd. At least for Bart Lloyd, for me, what stood out was, he has knowledge and has supported equitable development in the past. But again, also for Mr. Toprani, he stood out for me as well. So I just wanted to echo the same sentiments.
Thank you. Councillor Bova?
Thank you. I think that we have kind of come to agreement on who we think would be a good candidate, but I do want to bring up the type of applicants that we look for, and I agree totally that we need people on the boards who know our city. We wouldn't want to appoint someone who has only lived here for a month or something like that. Obviously we want people who are community members who can know and care. But I do think that we also should place value in people's knowledge and expertise when thinking about who we want to appoint. And I think that, I think Anand is a great candidate. I would happily vote for Anand, but that doesn't mean it's because I want to not vote for someone who's a lawyer or for an architect. I think having those people on the board would also be super beneficial. And I think it's really important to consider the backgrounds and qualities and expertise of the applicants.
Okay,
I didn't say not to vote for him. I just said that I didn't think it was necessary.
Also, what I will say is that it has been said to me by Councillor Segley that we really should have standardized questions. I think that would be really helpful for the various boards and commissions, only because we're kind of, there's coming from different places. If each of us come up with some standardized questions, I'm sure we can put it into a format. That was suggested once before by Councillor McLaughlin, and I thought it was a good one. Councillor McCalla, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I feel like, we gotta work on because I want to stick to the subject, and I feel like because we're going in order of who raised their hand, and then there's this piece where I'm like, all right, I want to go back to what we were talking about 2 minutes ago. So it kind of, I don't know, we'll have to talk about that too, I guess. But yeah, I think I want to be clear in saying that I don't think that the only candidates that are qualified to serve are just lawyers and architects. So I want to be clear about that for sure, because I am neither an architect or a lawyer. So there's that. But I also understand that I have been also a part of the North End Urban Plan for over a year, and looking at these ordinances and being able to interpret them does require a skill set and is super important, because I'm going to tell you right now, we're in for a very robust conversation, especially looking forward, and especially looking forward to the interpretations and the zoning and the ordinances that are there. I just think it's really important to be able to have that skill set. Not that all the planning board members need to come with those skill sets, but there should be again, an instance of we're trying to create the best scenario. And I'm looking at even those form-based codes. It is not easy to interpret. And I will say this, I probably have said this to each of you before. We are looking at probably what looks like Godzilla versus King Kong right now in this North End Urban Plan. And yep, we need all the skill set that we can get.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments from the council? Are we ready to vote?
I did just want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for having this discussion and having this meeting and following up on the conversation we had at the end of the last interviews. I think this is really helpful.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion? Would somebody like to
Yes,
make a motion?
motion to appoint Anand Toprani.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second discussion. Hearing none. Can you raise your right hand if you approve? Okay, and
Prove what?
approve
motion.
Mr. Topriani, sorry, Anand Topriani. Okay, and it was unanimous. Clerk, can you record that, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. In the future, I'm gonna ask that you take the votes, you know, I'll ask for them to raise their hand, but you announce what it is. If it's unanimous, or if there's a split decision, if you could announce the names that were for and the names against.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We had some wonderful candidates. I think everybody had to agree. Very, very impressive. There are a number of openings on some other boards. Some of these candidates did express an interest in the other boards, and I think we should take them under consideration. There's also another committee that has to be filled within the next month, which I will let you know about. For some reason, it has gone by the wayside over the years, but it's something that we have to do. So you'll be hearing more about that within the next couple of days. So
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.